bike, and run. In the Kona sun, we're gonna swim, bike, and run. In the Kona sun, it's Breakfast with Bob.
And Poncho Man, everybody. Welcome back to Breakfast with Bob from Kona at Huggo's on the Rocks. My name is Bob Babbitt, brought to you by Master Spas, SFuels, right fuel, right time. HOKA, Fly Human Fly, Deboer, Wetsuits, Quintana, and of course, our Challenged Athletes Foundation. Our next guest, 3-time Ironman World Champion, 2-time Ironman 70.3 World Champion. I think at the age of 38, the oldest winner of the Ironman World Championship, Mr. Craig Alexander.
Hello, Bob. How are you?
I am wonderful. So good to see you, my friend. And what a way to end up an amazing week by having the 3-time champion on with us.
I'm honored to be the bookend.
You are the bookend, my friend.
Yeah, no, it's great. I'm always good to come on and have a chat, and always awesome to be here this week.
One of the things you said to me years ago, it might have been after your first win, and we chatted about more demands on your time, right? There's more demands on your time when you win. And you're like, but yeah, I like that because it means I'm doing something right. It means there's more demands from sponsors, from media. If they weren't, then I'm not doing my job. You still think that way?
Absolutely. I mean, I think first and foremost, your job is to perform.
Right.
And when you do that, other things come along. Other benefits, other demands, potentially other obstacles. But yeah, I mean, I sort of embraced that whole thing, and I tried to be as organized and planned with my time as I could. And, you know, as a young athlete starting out, and I wasn't super young, I started a little later, I was 20 or 21 when I started, but, you know, the thought of having sponsors was kind of like a dream.
Yes.
And a best case scenario. And yeah, so when it actually happened, no, I never saw it as an inconvenience or anything. I just was always just really thankful for it, but made sure that, as you say, there are things that come along with that though, and particularly for a high visibility race like this one here, and for a week like this where the whole industry's here and a lot of the triathlon media's here, you're very busy, and just got to make sure you got a good schedule in place.
So when I look back at especially back in the day, if Australians wanted to make a living in the sport, you sort of had to come to the U.S. or go to Europe. Yep. And it's not like you can do it for the weekend. You're committing, and you're coming over, and you're spending a lot of time and not knowing, am I going to make it or not? It's a struggle. I remember you and Luke McKenzie were sleeping on air mattresses near La Paloma Theater in Encinitas, and trying to figure out, are we going to make a living at this sport or not? And if I win next weekend, maybe I can pay rent. That's a little different pressure.
It is, but I think it's kind of formative. It helps you develop a way of thinking about the sport and a mindset that, yes, sport is fun, but when you race in the elite ranks, it's professional sport, and the bottom line is performances and results. So, right. You know, I think in any sport, when you're from Australia, you travel. You have to play away from home a lot, as they say. So
away games.
Yeah. So I just got used to. Initially, I went to Europe for 3 years. It was hard racing, very competitive, foreign country, different food, different language, and then, yeah, really found my sweet spot. I think coming to the US, I loved the racing there. The short course circuit was the best in the world. All the best.
It really was, because it's certainly not now, but back then you had the Lifetime event in Minneapolis, where what'd you win, $250,000 there?
Yeah. So you had Lifetime Fitness for that series. That race ran for I think 6 years, and then High V came in off the back of that. So
big money. Yeah,
and they're all just really competitive. All the best male and female triathletes in the world race there. Big prize purses, live coverage on television. So it was a good time to be in the US racing for sure. But I think for me, what got me into the sport was here. This is what I'd seen growing up, and you know, when Welshie won, it was, and you and I've talked about this, it was really the springboard to take the sport more seriously. And even though I felt as a young athlete I was much more suited to the short course,
right.
I was, you know, playing team sports, I usually had the speed positions, and but the fire was lit by this race, and that was the dream, and the motivation was always about this. So that's what I guess formed my thinking around what races to do. And even though it took me a while, I knew I would always get here.
There was a time when the goal was the Olympics, and you had, was it chicken pox? I can't remember the entire background of that, but you ended up, and there was a lot of you guys, Mwaka, a lot of guys who were hopefully going to make the Olympic team, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, I got pulled. I actually got pulled out of the Olympic trial race in 2000, 3 days before the race. The federation just said you're not racing.
Wait, in the Olympic trials race, like to qualify for the 2000 Olympics?
Yeah, I'd been given a start by the ITU.
Yes.
And then it wasn't just me, there were two others, three of us. So, yeah, I mean, look, I don't think there were ever any personal agendas, but sport can be political. People can have their reasons for doing things. And I think sometimes as a young athlete, it's hard to accept and understand.
Of course.
You take everything personally. Fast forward from that, the next year, I think I got second or third up at the national champs at a World Cup race in Mooloolaba. Wanted to go to the Commonwealth Games, but that's when I got the chicken pox, and it was probably a blessing in disguise because McKeely Jones said to me, "You should come to the US. The racing over there would really suit you." And I laugh with McKeely now. Be careful what you wish for, because I turned up on her doorstep a couple of months later.
Well, and McKeely was the same thing. She came from, we met at Tahiti, where she won a sprint finish with one of the Mouton twins. Yeah. And then she came, and they had a $500 Ford Maverick and trying to figure out how to make a living. And I think a lot of times people see you, see McKeely, see Welchie, and they don't understand the backstory. They don't understand that you guys really had nothing. And it was either I make it here or I go home.
Yeah, I will say, I think my generation, Craig Walton, Greg Bennett, Chris McCormack, myself, I think we had it a little bit easier because Greg and McKeely had paved the way for us.
Yes.
And I know every race I went to, they loved the Australians. They loved Greg and McKeely. Of course, they won a lot. So I think it made it easier for us to follow in their footsteps.
Yes.
Yeah, they just blazed a trail for us to follow. And it also, as a young athlete, you could see the races that they did that you wanted to do. So, I think every Australian triathlete owes them a debt for sure. They were certainly the first two, and there were a few others as well that came over and raced in the US and also Europe. And it sort of made the next generation see that it was possible and there was a pathway. And yeah, I mean, for a lot of my generation, right through Luke McKenzie, as you mentioned, Marinda Carfrae, so many athletes, we ended up in the US, and that was a great thing.
So when you look at from 2007 to 2012, from the male side, it was Aussie, right? Yeah. You win, Macca wins in 7, you get 8 and 9, Macca gets 10, and you get 11, and Pete Jacobs gets 12. Yeah. So you got like basically 5 in a row. During that period of time, was there more buzz in Australia about the sport?
I think there was. I mean, I will say I think the sport in Australia is still very, very healthy now. I go to a lot of events, and the events are sold out. From a participation standpoint, there's still a buzz around the sport. I mean, you and I both know when you've got pro athletes doing well at big races like this, it
makes a difference.
Yeah, big difference, and it's an extra buzz. And I mean, things go in cycles. We had a great run there. And then off the back of that, Rinny won a couple more as well.
She won 3, yeah.
Yeah, well, she won 3. So I think one of her wins was in that 5-year period, but 2 came after. So, hopefully I'd like to think that it inspired a lot of the younger athletes and maybe showed them there was a pathway to racing the same way that Greg and McKeely had showed us. So, and I think things go in cycles too. At the moment, I think there's a lot of strength in Europe on the male and female side of racing at all the different distances. So, but we got some good athletes coming through. So people always say, what's happened to Triathlon Australia? I don't think anything's happened. Things just move in cycles, and we got some super talented athletes. So we're doing okay.
So you come over here in 2007, you get second, and I remember a conversation you had with Dave Scott, and and it was one of those things where I think you were like, well, I stayed back a little bit, right? I didn't go with Macca when he took off early, and Dave was like, why? You know the way Dave Scott races, you go off the front. You always go off the front. Did that help change your attitude towards coming into 2008?
It definitely did, and just also, I don't think you can know the depths to which you can go to until you do it.
Right.
So, I mean, I came here with full intentions in 2007 of going very, very deep, but then the ghosts of Kona, you hear the stories. I've watched the races.
You've seen Paula.
I've seen the meltdowns. Yeah, and you just think when really experienced athletes can melt down here, it's going to be very easy for a rookie to do the same. So I was very conservative as opposed to Chris, who was, I think it was his 6th time here, and he was all in. And you know, sometimes it takes you a few, I guess, friction points to get the win, to figure out what it takes. But yeah, for me, 07 was still a great performance. I'm really
phenomenal. Second place.
Really proud of it. But I learned a lot with that conversation with Dave. I just learned a lot reflecting on the race and thinking there were so many places where I could have improved, not only in the race itself, but in the lead up.
Right.
So yeah, I took all of those lessons, I think, forward with me into 2008, and yeah, was able to win here for the first time. Probably the hardest conditions I ever raced in here. It was kind of lumpy in the swim early. There was a bit of wind up early. The groups on the bike broke up. We were in like 1s and 2s riding up to Harvey. And I got in the lead, I think, by mile 15 and felt in control, but felt that I'd honoured Dave's words of, you know, getting to the front, working hard, doing what you need to do. Yes. And so a different result.
So you win in 7, you win in 8, you win in 9, and then 10, Macca wins. But for 11, you changed everything. And that, to me, is the mark of a champion. We saw Paula Fraser go off the front all the time, and when she won her 8th title, she stayed back. She was like, I want to mix it up. I don't want to be off the front and be the target. And then so she won the race on the run. That day, you went off and you had a great bike ride, fastest bike ride for you by what, 15 minutes or something like that?
It was 13 minutes quicker than the year before for much lower power and heart rate.
Yeah. And then you go off and break the course record and win your 3rd title, and everything is wonderful. But winning it that way, winning it differently, did it mean more because you basically changed perceptions of how Craig Alexander is going to win this race?
Yeah, man, it did. I mean, I think if you look at the great athletes, and like you, I'm a student of the sport. I think that the really good athletes have a few strings to their bow. They can win a couple of different ways. And that was the era, and we see it now with the technology that's still impacting the performances. And I think 09 was the year when a lot of the non-UCI time trial specific super bikes came into the sport. Athletes were being a lot more, I guess, vigilant with their preparation around aerodynamics and those kind of things. And I was probably a bit slow to the party with that. I just thought it was athlete on athlete, the fittest would win. But in an event that goes for such a long time, aerodynamics, comfort, nutrition, all of those things, of course, are important. So going forward into 2011, I just thought I'm just going to lay everything out there, blank canvas, see if I can do a lot of things differently and a lot of things better. And I don't think in that analysis, what was clear was my training was pretty good. That year in 2010, I think I'd put out the highest power on the bike that I'd ever put out here, over 4 watts per kilo. But I obviously wasn't getting a return on that investment because I wasn't as aerodynamic as some of the other guys. So that became the focus for the next 3 to 6 months, dialing in a better position, better aerodynamics, better nutrition. I got a new race suit, came back in 2011, raced in an aero helmet for the first time. And I think I rode a 4:23 that year from memory, and at the time it was the 4th or 5th quickest bike split in the history of the event. I went off the front with a couple of other guys, and I had a different mindset as well. I knew what my fitness and form was like. I'd won the 70.3 Worlds a month before, and I had a great swim, set me up beautifully going onto the bike, and I thought as soon as someone makes a move, I'm going. And I figured it would be Lieto, and it was. So he went at about the airport and got it like a minute up the road, and I just pinned my ears back and went too. And I don't know how long it took to bridge that gap, but I got up to him, and when I looked back, only 2 others, Marino and Luke McKenzie, had come. So by the time we made the turn at Harvey, we had like six minutes on the front group, which had most of the contenders in it, and just sort of went on with it from there.
So when did you know it was time to, okay, I've been a pro at this for a long time, it's time to just not race at the top end?
That's a hard question to answer, and I think it's easier to answer in retrospect or with hindsight. So in 2013, coming to this race, we were in Boulder, Independence Day actually. We were meant to go to a barbecue at Simon Lessing's house. They were having a July 4th party, and my wife wasn't feeling well. took her to the hospital. Long story short, she ended up in ICU.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, she had shingles in her throat. And that was, we were over there, no immediate family around us in a different country. Our youngest daughter, Lani, was 8 weeks old. So I had all 3 kids, and what would have normally happened was I would have called my mum or Neri's mum or Neri's sister, Jules, who used to come over and travel with us. But I just felt some desire to look after the kids myself when Neri was in hospital, and she ended up being in hospital for 2 weeks. And so looking back, I think, in the earlier years of my racing career, nothing really would have interrupted my preparation. It would have been, you're so focused, you don't see the forest for the trees sometimes. And so looking back, I think that was, I turned 40 that year, and I think at some point you feel like everyone around you who's committed and sacrificed so much, how much more do they need for you to do something that you love?
Yes.
So it was never anything that was spoken about, but I know Neri kept saying to me, should we get Jules? Should we get my mum to come over? And I said, no, I'm
good.
I'm good in looking after the kids. And so I think looking back, that's when the Ironman career definitely wasn't going to be a priority anymore.
Right.
But I still love the sport. So I mean,
more 70.3s.
Yeah, Olympic distance and 70.3s for another 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
And really it was the pandemic that ended it all. And in fact, I'd planned 2019, I had a couple of nice wins, and I got some really nice invitations to race over in Europe. So I thought, I haven't done that for a while. I might head over there. And so I was training through our summer, leading up to 2020, and of course we all know what happened. So that became the sort of the natural conclusion for my racing career.
Croy, always a pleasure to spend time with you. And I've got to ask how Aussie's doing.
Aussie's doing amazing. So he's continuing with his rehab. It was 2 years ago last month that he had the stroke. He's regained a lot of his function. Rehab is a daily thing for him, and he just embraces it. He's a tough kid, amazing mindset, just always positive. And that was from day dot. And you know the journey well, because you reached out to me, you're one of the first. Hooked me up with some doctors and specialists, which I'm forever grateful for. But the early days were rough. We didn't know how it was going to play out, but things are going well. So we've been very, very lucky, and he's just a great kid. He just gets into he's never been, even before he had the stroke, he was never the kid who complained or he just everything. He was a glass half full, not a glass half empty guy. So he's doing good. He's doing good.
The not knowing is always the toughest.
Yeah.
Once you have a formula, once you have this is what could come back, then you can make best of it, and he'll make the best of it. He'll be whatever he wants to do, he'll do.
Yeah, 100%. That's what he's done. So, we're in a good place. Everybody's good, and I just need to get them all back here 1 year.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking time, Craig. Craig Alexander has been our guest. That is a wrap for a full week of Breakfast with Bob. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And Sunday, we'll be broadcasting our championship edition with our top 3. Thanks, everybody, once again. And Pancho Man takes us out.
We're gonna swim, bike, and run in the Kona sun. We're gonna swim, bike, and run in the Kona sun. It's Breakfast with Bob. Chee-hoo.
Thank you, Pancho Man.